A lot has happened since yesterday's video in terms of NFL free agency, and that is exactly what today's video will discuss. Updated free agent acquisitions, the impact of players going to new teams, and implications of everything that has happened since yesterday. This is without a doubt the most active time of the year, obviously aside from the NFL draft, in terms of players going to new teams, and this is the time of year where fans genuinely get excited about players going to their teams or get very upset about players leaving their former teams. As I was uploading yesterday's video, AJ Green signed with the Cardinals, and obviously there were a lot of signings after that. And as I record today's video, Kenny Golladay is scheduled to meet with the Giants, and Juju Smith-Schuster has interest from the New York Jets, so each of those receivers could sign while I am in the process of the video or shortly after it uploads. But before we get started, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as each only take a second to do and it would be very much appreciated. Now let's begin. Now, having mentioned AJ Green going to the Cardinals, we have to discuss him going to the desert and the impact he will have there. AJ had 47 catches on 104 targets in 2020 and played in every game this past year. There were serious concerns regarding his ability to stay healthy, given he missed all of 2019 and a huge chunk of 2018 too. Now, what must be noted about AJ isn't his career highlights or 6 1,000-yard years in his first 7 with only missing it by 36 yards in 2016, but what must be noted is his age. AJ will be 33 at the start of the 2021 season, and he will be the clear number 2 behind one of the best receivers in the entire NFL in DeAndre Hopkins. AJ's best days are obviously behind him, and as I say a lot when I either criticize a player or say things of this nature, this by no means should not offend anyone. And in AJ's past 25 games, he has 93 catches for 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns, which translate to a 60, 770, and 5 stat line, which is about what should be expected from AJ this year. Now, as of this point, Larry Fitzgerald is a free agent, and there was nothing more than a Twitter rumor, so this is not me saying this, with actual credentials behind it, that he would want to go to the Vikings, if they were interested. But with Larry and having him been in the league since 2004, he will be 38 at the start of next season, so whether he is a Cardinal, a Viking, or whatever team in 2021, it should be noted that his production will not be a lot this upcoming year. Has he been an absolutely legendary receiver and one of the best of all time? Yes. But again, I highly doubt he will be a Jerry Rice 90-catch, 1,200-yard receiver at 40 years old. So getting back to AJ and how he'll produce for the Cardinals this year. He will be a solid number 2, but barring something crazy or unforeseen like a DeAndre Hopkins injury or Kyler injury or something along these lines, AJ should be in the 60 to 65 catch range with around 750 to 900 yards, and hopefully for the Cardinals, a playoff appearance and a few playoff wins. Next, since we didn't discuss them at all yesterday, we have to discuss the Minnesota Vikings and the 2 moves they have made so far by signing Dalvin Tomlinson and quarter Patrick Peterson. Now, if any of you guys consistently watched the Vikings last year, then you know, the defense and the run defense specifically were awful. They weren't on primetime a whole lot in 2020, and for good reason might I add, but them giving up 6 rushing touchdowns on Christmas Day to Alvin Kamara, and to be completely honest as a Vikings fan, this was how the season typically went. For the first time in the Mike Zimmer era, the defense was atrocious, and to be fair to Zim and the Vikings, they didn't plan on nose tackle Michael Pierce sitting out the entire 2020 season. No judgment to be clear, but as a franchise they certainly did not expect it, and it showed when teams consistently ran all over them. So for them to get back and to sign a player in Dalvin Tomlinson, well, Zimmer and Spielman essentially said, look, we're not dealing with this and being consistently embarrassed again, so we are going to try and build our own Williams wall in the 2020s, and while it would be nice for Dalvin and Michael Pierce to be good, having those expectations is incredibly lofty and would essentially be the same as the Patriots drafting a quarterback in the first round this year and say, look, be the next Tom Brady. And obviously those guys aren't on the same level because Pat and Kevin were not on the GOAT levels of defensive tackle, but they were extremely dominant at their position and were the gold standard for a few years in the mid-2000s. Dalvin Tomlinson statistically will not be great, as he won't ever be a 15-sack guy, nor is he expected to, might I add, but if the Vikings improve significantly in the rushing defense in 2021, then he did his job, likewise with Michael Pierce. And a person that has to be incredibly happy about this signing specifically is Eric Kendricks having those 2 mountain of men in front of him who will free lanes for him to get into the backfield and make his job much, much easier. He is one of the best linebackers in the league as it is, and this will only ease his job for him. Now for Patrick Peterson, the newest member of the Vikings. Patrick obviously isn't the top 3 corner that he was for so long, as at a point he was 8 for 8 in terms of 8 seasons and 8 Pro Bowls, and obviously that is nothing short of incredible. But I highly doubt he will come back and be a first-team All-Pro player, and that's fine. As a Vikings fan, I am not expecting that out of him. But good, solid corner play can be expected, and what is also going to be critical from Pat Pete's standpoint is the veteran leadership he will bring to the team and how much he can help mentor these young corners. Jeff Gladney and Cameron Dantzler were selected last year in the first and third rounds of the draft, and having a veteran, a future Hall of Famer to help these guys with their technique and ability will help the Vikings immensely. Like I said, I don't expect Pat Pete to be a first-team All-Pro player, but his veteran leadership and mentoring young corners will be worth his contract alone. The Vikings should be back next year, and this will only help their path to get back to being a top team in the NFC. Now, since the Vikings signed a former member of the Giants in Dalvin Tomlinson, we have to discuss former members of the Vikings the Giants signed in the last few days, being Fady Adebayo and now, as I was recording this, Kyle Rudolph. So Fady didn't have great numbers in 2020 by any means, but what I do want you guys to know is he was double-teamed at an extraordinary rate this past year, and obviously that limits his production on the stat sheet, but I do think he will be a very good acquisition for the Giants playing next to veteran lineman Leonard Williams. This has the potential to be one of the best signings from this free agency class, due in large part to how good he can play next year if everything goes the right way. Now, I don't think Fady will be a 15-sack player, but he was on the defensive line this past year with players like Shamar Stephen, Jaleel Johnson, and DJ Wanham, and obviously those guys aren't household names, so who did they, opposing offensive linemen, double-team the most? Fady, without a doubt, and due to this, his production was severely limited. Now, to expect him to put up TJ Watt numbers or Aaron Donald numbers or anything like that is absurd, but playing next to Leonard Williams, where he can be in a secondary role or just a role where he isn't solely focused on by opposing offensive linemen, well, this would be best for Fady, and this is a place where he can get 8 to 10 sacks in 2021. Truly an underrated signing, and I love this for the Giants. Now, as for Kyle Rudolph being a new member of the New York Football Giants, I do think they overpaid him a hair, as Rudy hasn't been the most productive player in the past few years for the Vikings, but I also want to add that he hasn't been in a favorable situation for himself and really most of his career either. For the early years, Adrian Peterson was there, and while he did make a Pro Bowl in 2012, Kyle that is, and ultimately won the Pro Bowl MVP, his quarterback play was never great during those years, and then the emergence of Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen really held him back statistically, so I do want to say Rudy is one of the most underrated and truly underappreciated players in the league, as he only had 37 targets this past year, and there's not a lot he can do when given those little targets or that little of a number. Now, I don't expect him to all of a sudden have Travis Kelce numbers because I don't, but in the same sense, a good locker room guy and a player who has phenomenal hands, I mean, just look at some of the catches Kyle makes, is perfect for a young quarterback like Daniel Jones. In terms of the player they're acquiring, this is great for the Giants, even if they did slightly overpay for Kyle Rudolph. Now to discuss a lot of the other signings, and again, the period between me finishing the YouTube video and uploading is about an hour or so there could be another big signing, but Will Fuller to the Dolphins is good for Miami and good for Tua. Will stretch the field and give them a good deep threat, as it's clear he's not a number 1 receiver in the NFL. There's nothing wrong with that, as every team needs a solid number 2 receiver, and I say that assuming they draft Jamar Chase at 3 overall in the draft in a few short weeks. I really hope they don't try and force Will Fuller to be their number 1 guy and make Tua work with him and him only. Now, a signing I particularly did not like at all was the Raiders signing Kenyan Drake. Kenyan isn't a bad player by any means, I'm not saying he is, I just don't agree with this and the direction of their roster with where they are going. Again, I'm not hating on Kenyan Drake as much as I am displeased with what this means for the Raiders passing game outside of tight end Darren Waller. They spent a first round pick on Henry Ruggs last year, and they gave him on average a grand total of less than 3 targets per game, and that is irritating from a standpoint of people wanting him to fail because they can say, oh, well, Ruggs is speed only and John Ross 2.0, when that simply is not the case. If they would have spent a pick last year on anything else, just not a receiver, to then pay a second back $7 million per year, I would probably praise this signing and love it because then they would have 2 good running backs. But again, when investing a high first round pick in a player like Ruggs to a year later, and really not even because the draft occurs in late April, pay another skill position player good money is not something I agree with. Not only that, but with this addition of Kenyan, what exactly is the plan if they get down against 14 quick points against the Chiefs or Chargers? Raiders fans will quickly get sick of hearing things like, this team is not built to come from behind and everything in this general ballpark. So anyways, I like Kenyan Drake, but I do not like him specifically going to the Raiders. And last but not least, Mitch Trubisky is now a Bill, and honestly good for Mitch. It was always unfair to him to be compared to the other guys in the 2017 draft class after the success they had, but I do wish him the best and think he can be a great backup moving forward for the rest of his career. Mitch can make a solid living for the next decade and essentially be a Chase Daniel type, as I know if my team's quarterback went down, I would not mind Mitch being the backup at any given point in time. So while in theory he is a draft bust, he can still make solid money from the NFL and retire in 10 to 12 years with a good chunk of change and call it a day. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed the old style again, and as always, love you guys. Deuces. Peace.